Thank you. Senate.
Senator Mike Nozzolio.
Thank you, Senator. President Lynch, it's good to see you again. Thank you for your cogent testimony. Big surprise that for all that we have been through as a city, a state, all our cities are going through today, with New York City being blessed with the most professional police force possible, but it's a shock to hear of the lack of tools that you have on the front lines. Tell us, is the administration doing anything to heighten the awareness of this is a serious homeland security issue? It's one that the federal government should be vested in. Tell us about any discussions you've had on that score.
Sure. Our concern is this. In any active shooter style incident, and we see from the attacks that we've had, they can happen any place at any time. It can happen in a cafe, it can happen in a mall in one of our boroughs, or on the subway system as well. So the first police officers that will respond to that attack or that 911 call will be a local police officer on patrol, what we call our sector police officers. When they respond, they're going to respond with bullet-resistant vests that are basic and a 9mm weapon. What we need to do is have an anti-terrorism kit. Now, what the department has done is grown those different departments within our agency, but they're not the first ones to respond. We need to be able to respond and neutralize that attack immediately, the first police officer on the scene. For instance, if you looked in the films of San Bernardino tragedy, when the attack happened, you had police officers respond. The local sector cars, police officers on patrol responded. They had long guns, ballistic helmets, and ballistic vests. And then the specialized unit, what we call emergency service, many know as SWAT, they responded. But we were able to protect ourselves as we went in to stop that attack right in the get-go. In New York City, the local police officer in your precinct, in your neighborhood, will respond, and unfortunately, most likely, will be shot because we're not equipped to be able to hold off that. The specialized unit, they come later. Their minutes in an attack like this are important. It takes time for them to get there. But the local police officer around your neighborhood that gets that radio run, as we call it, they'll be there within minutes and get shot.
You'd certainly expect units to be developed. It makes sense. But it appears that the terrorist threat is a moving target in the sense that they're changing tactics all the time.
That's right.
It is much more of almost a guerrilla on scene situation as opposed to major events. I mean, who knows? But the fact is, we need to be equipped for everything. And this appears that, yes, the unit makes sense. However, and we seem to be equipping the unit, but not those on the front lines in Times Square or where people gather or in one of the stadiums or wherever. Is that the basic concern of our PD?
Yes, absolutely. And we have to be concerned with multiple things happening at once, as we've seen in Paris, where you may have one of our boroughs, an incident happen, and simultaneously in Times Square or in one of our neighborhoods. I live in Queens, out in Queens, in one of our malls. It all goes on at the same time. So then those specialized units will be stretched. But if our local police officers are equipped and trained in those techniques, we'll be able to respond and hold it off and save folks' lives. And that's our concern.
This is not a hypothetical situation. No. I mean, just look at what happened at Paris.
Absolutely.
Paris. That's a template. So keep us informed. Let us know what this group can do, particularly our areas of public protection, the requests we need to make from Washington as well. You raise excellent points, and we'd be glad to be supportive.
Senator, I appreciate that.
Assembly?
Our next speaker is Assemblymember Maliotakis.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Assemblymember.
I want to say, first off, well, thank you to the men and women of the NYPD. Thank you for what you do each and every day. I want to say that I support the initiatives that you outlined here today.
Thank you.
And especially when it comes to the parity issue and disability. Certainly, they all take the same risk, and one shouldn't be treated differently than the other. And so I support you, and I lend my voice to you to use as you continue to fight this fight. I just had 3 relatively quick questions. In October, we had a terrible tragedy with the shooting of police officer Randolph Holder. I believe that there is a tremendous problem with the drug diversion laws that we have currently in the state of New York. I wanted to get just your opinion, if you could just talk a little bit about this. Someone who had 4 felony drug convictions, in my view, should never have been released from prison and put into a diversion program. And had he been kept in jail where he belonged, I believe that police officer Holder would be alive today. And so I'd like to just get your perspective on this, and what are your concerns about the drug diversion law, and should it be changed?
I think that when you have someone with such a violent history that's there, when they go before the judge, he or she needs to have all the information in front of them to make that decision. Someone that goes into a diversion program should be someone that's nonviolent, that shows a proclivity to do better, to get better, and maybe they've made a mistake. But what we've seen is that's been bastardized, where you go in, it's just to clear the calendar, to clear the docket, to let's just put them in the diversionary program for drug treatment, alcohol treatment, and all those different types of things, which are fine for certain folks. When you have a violent repeat offender, I don't believe they should be allowed to go in that program, because what will happen is we will face them while we're riding the subway, and our members, New York City police officers, will have to face them on the street. And we had that with Randolph Holder, that police officer who stopped a bicycle robbery, and he spun around and shot that police officer and killed him, a police officer from a family of police officers. Why? Because that perp was allowed to go back on the street through a diversionary program, which he never, ever should have been included in.
Has the city of New York or anyone else in the state asked you your opinion on this, or to work with them in changing the law? Senator Marty Gold and I are actually working on legislation now. I was wondering if anyone else has talked to you about this, or has the mayor had any discussions with you on this?
No, just the public discussion that happened after Officer Holder's assassination that day, but we look forward to working with you and to get that accomplished, to make all of us, quite frankly, all of us safe. But if the first-line police officers aren't safe, there's not a chance for the rest of us.
Sure. On that note, we are one of 3 states that does not consider the danger level of defendants when setting bail. I was just curious if you would comment on that as well, and if you have any proposals to change that.
Yes, traditionally now it's bail is used. Will that person come back to court? So we have cases where they don't and they still get bail, but obviously you should look and say, what condition are they in, what crimes have they have, and will they commit a violent crime? Even if they have the funds to be able to get out on bail, and whether they'll come back or not. What will they do while they're out? So I think it's very important you look at the background of each defendant in that case and make an educated decision on the information. So I believe that if you have a violent background, you should not be out.
Okay. So you would support, obviously, changing
Yes.
that law then? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. One last question. Just the 2014 sanctuary law prohibits NYPD from cooperating with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. In fact, there was a report that was issued by the Criminal Bureau, Justice Bureau of the NYPD, that says 474 of the 504 immigration detainers received from the feds were not honored. I find this to be a little shocking. I mean, I think these sanctuary laws that were put in place by the City Council are really misguided. Do you have an opinion on this? I just want to know, what are your thoughts on this as well? Because, well, I'll let you speak first.
So we should be allowed to use every tool on the street as police officers to take someone that committed a crime. Look, police officers don't want to go out and go after undocumented folks. It's not what we're looking to do. We're out looking to keep everyone safe and do the job. But unfortunately, sometimes those same folks are committing crime, just like a person that's legally here in this country may commit a crime. So in both of those cases, we should be allowed to look at and use every aspect. Sometimes that aspect may be deportation. So we shouldn't be too quick to close doors on what we can use to make the street safe.
There was an incident where someone who was undocumented on Staten Island was arrested for trespassing, was released back on the street, then later on was accused of rape. Then they were brought back in. But the issue I find with this, some of these laws and the bail laws, is that some of these individuals won't come back for their court dates.
That's right.
So I think that's a major issue that we need to address as well. Do you have any suggestions on that front?
I think, again, part of the tools, and I'll begin research it some more for you and with you, but I think all those tools should be allowed. But if there's a violent history there, or there's a chance they're not coming back, they shouldn't be allowed out on bail. It's as simple as that. We think it should be a fair system in court. We think it should be a system where they're before the judge. But in order to make sure that happens, we have to make sure they show up. So if there's a violent history or they're illegal, they may not come back.
It seems some of these policies, they don't have common sense behind them, but I thank you so much for sharing your opinions. Thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Kruger.
Evening. Hi. So my district is the 19th, 17th, and 13th precincts. And happily, I think we sometimes have more arguments about bikes on the sidewalks and the irritation of hovercrafts bumping people, old people over, than organized crime.
We hope that's everyone's problem to deal with.
Exactly. Just for the record, you don't support electric bikes or hovercrafts, do you?
No.
Thank you very much.
I think I'd probably fall off it, but yeah.
It's just, it's creating too much chaos.
Fair enough.
But more seriously, although that is an issue in my district.
Of course, of course.
Excuse me. My understanding is every NYPD officer is going to be given some kind of Apple phone that gives you direct access to records of anyone you're picking up. So partly as follow-up to that question, you will or now have more direct data about the people that you are stopping on our streets. Can you talk to me about that program?
Yes, sure. The new Apple phones that the department is providing for all our police officers on patrol is basically like a mini computer in your hand where you can more quickly run the names of the folks to find out if they have warrants, what's their backgrounds, the location you're going to, has there been other incidents in that apartment or that building. So it's a safety factor for the member as well as knowing what you're walking into as a police officer. And it's more extensive than that. It's a huge amount of information at your fingertips, literally in that radio car, where when I came on the job in 1984, there was no computer in the car. You'd have to possibly take that person in, run the name at the station house. Sometimes it popped a warrant, sometimes it didn't, but it was consuming of time. This is, for a safety reason, it works. To make sure we're dealing with the right folks and not the wrong folks, it works. So it's a good tool to get the job done. And it's more extensive than that. You can even see what other 911 calls are going on in your area of patrol, in your sector, in your foot post. So it educates the police officer exactly what she or he is dealing with on their post. So I think it's a good tool that helps us get the job done.
And is it rolled out completely now, or is it rolling out?
It's not rolled out completely, but it's well on the way to doing that to make sure every police officer on patrol. So I would venture to say, more of a question for the department, but I would definitely say by mid-year, the end of the year, that every police officer will have them.
Great. And then just one more question,
Sure.
I know it's so late.
Okay.
Following up, I think, on Senator Nozzolio's questions about your proposal for anti-terrorism package for each police officer. So would you actually propose that patrol officers who are walking a beat are carrying long guns?
No, we would have the what we call the radio car in your neighborhood, the patrol. They'd be equipped. It would be in their trunk, safeguarded. So when they're going to an incident like that, they can equip themselves and take it out. Now, if you're on a foot post, obviously it wouldn't be practical to be standing on a foot post with a rifle slung over your shoulder. But in an incident like that you'd be able to have each station house equipped with that equipment, that when it's an all-hands-on-deck kind of call, that those police officers on foot can respond to the station house, get prepared, and then respond out to the scene and help get that job done. So we're not proposing that our police officers be walking around with a rifle on their back. We're not suggesting that. But we should have access to them no matter what our assignment is, and the training to use them properly, and the techniques in anti-terrorism. So quite frankly, we don't have to use them, but our techniques will help stop it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank
Senator.
you. Senator Hassel-Thompson.
Just very briefly, I just, somewhere in there, my ears got plugged up because I just, it almost sounded as though you did not feel that bail was a tool that should be used at all.
Say it again, I'm sorry.
My ears heard. I didn't say you said.
Fair enough. Well put.
My ears heard you expound on bail. Have you taken a look very closely at what the bail reform is that is being proposed?
We're looking at it, and we'll continue to look at it to better educate ourselves on those opinions. But what our concern...
Okay, wait.
Sure, go ahead.
Don't go ahead of me.
That's quite fine.
Thank you. Because this is your area of expertise, so you have to take it slow with me.
Sure.
I asked you know, I ask you that question very specifically because bail, as I earlier stated to one of the other presenters, is supposed to be administered or recommended before the presumption of guilt has been established. So therefore, when you start to talk about who should and shouldn't get bail, that's where I want you to enter.
What I'm saying in a process that, and the legislation will continue to review and make our opinions as we get educated on it more, is right now, as I understand it, the process is, will that person that's accused come back to court? What we find is many times that's not the case. Those that may have been released onto bail have a violent past, and while they're out on bail, continue to follow through on that violence as well. So what I think should happen is you should have the judge have all the information in front of her, in front of him, that can make it an educated decision on what kind of threat is this person if we do release them on bail. It's just purely a safety issue for our members and for the public we serve.
Okay, because I asked the question that way very deliberately because, again, when you look at it, that, you know, one of the things that we have to determine, and we're not clear that it's really the best way to go, is that we should be legislating that for the judges, because then we'll end up with nobody getting out. And so we want to be but we want to be able to give, in any of our legislative initiatives, the greatest latitude of discretion with the greatest amount of information.
That's right.
And so we kind of agree on
We're
that.
kind of on the same page, yes.
Yeah. So that the decision that's made is made in such a manner that fairness occurs. Our problem is, and as we have discussed, most times it's budgetarily, sometimes it's case caps. And if you listen, you sat through all this today, so you understand why those of us who continue to push for bail are cognizant of the fact that there are so many cases, and that, you know, when you come before the bench, neither the judge has had the opportunity to kind of read the disposition.
That's right.
Nor has the attorney that's representing the client had the proper amount of time to be able to understand this, instruct their client in order for them to get the best chance for justice.
And that should be all of our missions. That judge should have every bit of information. And quite frankly, at the end of the day, you want fair justice.
Timing. Some of these cases, we talked about backlog. We talked about all of those things today. And I think that when we really push for justice, I'm just interjecting this because I want people who think I'm soft on crime to understand that I'm not at all soft on crime.
Look, justice should never be rushed.
But rather, I do want to be sure that the process is as just as we can make it, because those are cases we don't want to get thrown out.
That's right. No, we agree it should always be justice. That's what we work on as police officers. We want to be fair to everyone, and justice should never be rushed. So whatever, and there may be others that can testify more cogently on this issue in the courts. What do we need to make sure that it's not rushed, but also because we're not rushing, they're not behind bars longer than they should be, because there may be someone innocent that's there. We want to get to the right answer, the right result. So whatever we need to do to keep the folks safe, that's what we should be looking at. That's what we should be legislating in your all cases. You should be deliberate in your deliberations, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Because my time ran out. I had a great question.
I understand.
But my time ran out.
Thank you, and we want to thank you, President Lynch, and all your members for all that you do on behalf of the people of New York City and the people of New York State. We appreciate you being here.
I thank all the senators, the assembly members as well, and any other information you need, we'll gladly provide to you. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you very much. Next, we have the New York State Public Employees Federation, and representing the New York State Department of Corrections and Community Service, we have Steve Drake and Paul Rigby, and also from the New York State Office of Information and Technology Services, Penny Hawansky.
Yes.
So you got a book with you. Welcome. I was hoping that we could maybe summarize the highlights of your testimony. We do have this. We will read it. But just in the interest of it being 7 o'clock, what you have to say is very important, and we will take it to heart. But if we could maybe streamline this a bit, it would be helpful. So welcome.
Absolutely, and thank you for the opportunity to speak before you today. My name is Nikki Brait. I'm a PEF Vice President. Penny Hawansky is that local council leader that you heard of earlier today. She has submitted her testimony, but I wanted to just speak about a couple of points that came up during the course of the day and to clarify some concerns that we had. Ms. Miller clearly does not understand the workforce, the current workforce. She did, in fact, reach out to PEF 24 hours prior to the budget being printed to ask PEF to accept her plan. She really wasn't willing to work with us, collaborate, or communicate, or even allow us positions. It was a yes or no for that. What we found most intriguing and incredible is that, you know, Ms. Miller says that we can't hire mid-level. We have promotional exams, correct? And we even went so far as to have in the 23s, which are some of the mid-levels, actually can come off of open competitive. That said, when you're looking at wanting to outsource your help desk, your layer 1 and 2, that's where that expertise starts to be learned, right? So if you're going to outsource that, later on down the road, you are not going to have that expertise that they're claiming that we don't have right now. And that is a huge concern when you look about the stability of the workforce that you have in place today. If you have that aging workforce that's going out, you're not bringing in them at that beginning level so that the mid-level can downtrain. That is an absolute huge problem. Ms. Miller talked about wanting to have a strong permanent workforce, but the hiring of contracting shows the opposite. Her words were much different than the actions that have been experienced, and the misinformation, quite frankly, is troublesome. It appears that a lot of thought went into the planning for the RFPs, outsourcing, not planning on investing on the existing employees, not allowing for the knowledge transfer, and not allowing the opportunities that Ms. Miller, quite frankly, gave lip service on. The way that the OITS has been progressing, that is what has begun the creation of the silos. Again, the succession plan for OITS simply is privatization. A little example, New York City did a lot of outsourcing and contracting at one point. What New York City did and other jurisdictions, they determined that those jobs need to be insourced, not only for cost savings, but for the security and the protection of the data and the network and the infrastructure. Ms. Miller's plan fails the workforce. It fails the state of New York. Ms. Miller's plan, quite frankly, is a recipe for disaster. One other thing I wanted to say that's a little bit off of that was I heard a lot about the cybersecurity today. The cybersecurity that ITS really provides is fundamental security over our networks and our data. It requires a specific skill set. The other part of the security that you really need is security against cyber warfare. That is a different skill set that is needed. So when we talk about, yes, we're throwing off some of the threats, those are some of the tools that they have on that they can do it, but cyber warfare is certainly a scare, and it's a whole different skill set than you need for those that are providing cyber security at the level in ITS. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good evening, distinguished committee members. My name is Steve Drake. I'm a vocational instructor at Mohawk Correctional Facility, and I've worked for the department for over 23 years. The New York State Public Employees Federation represents thousands of members within the Department of Corrections and Community Supervision. These include those who work in the prison health system, rehabilitative services, education, vocational training, and drug treatments. These are all areas critical to help DOCs maintain their mission, which is preparing and ensuring an inmate's ability to become a productive member of our communities upon their release. I'm going to consolidate some of this for you.
Thank you very much.
I would like to bring an issue of urgency to your attention. Our members rely on personal alarms for their safety in the prisons, commonly called the Personal Alarm System, or a PAS. These are small devices similar to a pager that our members activate during inmate assaults and potential danger. The current PAS system is in some instances 20 years old or older. Technology has advanced greatly during this time period, and there are now PAS systems that can pinpoint locations, which we would request. For quicker response times by security, there was a plan in place to update the PAS system, but with budget cuts in recent years, this very important item has been pushed to the back burner. As a priority and for everyone's safety, I am requesting that you help us make this lifeline possible. Next, PEP represents numerous licensed medical professionals within DOCS. These medical professionals provide vital health care 24 hours a day, every day, for all the inmates in facilities and any staff who get hurt or have other medical emergencies at work. DOCS, as many state agencies suffer from recruitment and retention problems of licensed professionals, which PEP represents, such as nurses, doctors, pharmacists, and nurse practitioners within facilities. The nurse vacancy rate has increased from 10% in January 2015 to 15.85% in November 2015, an increase of nearly 6% in less than 1 year, and this situation is not improving. These vacancies are attributed to, in part, salary disparities, what is offered by New York State compared to similar jobs in the community, resulting in the inability to attract and maintain a sufficient number of staff. Salary disparities are further exacerbated by the workplace conditions for these professionals. Recruitment and retention problems result in frequent scheduling and assignment changes, as well as a high volume of voluntary and mandatory overtime. Medical professionals represented by PEF are unsung, undervalued, and needlessly overstretched. 2 points that I'd like to make to you, and our key point things is DOCS has the most no mandatory overtime violations of all state agencies. And with that, DOCS has violated this law 2,729 times between July 1st, 2009 and November 2015, forcing nurses to work beyond their regular shift, repeatedly and unethically in violation of the New York State Labor Law 167-Part 177. I would like to say at this point that it is imperative that we begin to look at increasing the base pay of nurses from a grade 16 to a grade 18 to help in the recruitment and retention of qualified nurses. With Tier 6 in place and stagnant salaries, there is no incentive for qualified nurses to come to the state for employment or remain with the state for a career. At this time, I'll let Paul speak.
Mr. Rigby?
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to come today and testify to the executive budget, fiscal year 2016-2017, and to provide testimony on public protection hearing. My name is Paul Rigby. I'm a senior parole officer for the state of New York. I worked as a correction officer, a parole officer, and a senior parole officer for the last 17 years. I am the council leader for all the parole officers and the senior parole officers for the entire state. We've heard testimony today by Acting Commissioner Nucci. We've heard testimony from the commissioner for DCJS, and I wanted to give some stats and clarify some of the positions that they didn't have earlier for you guys to consider. Right now, let me give you some facts. You heard Acting Commissioner Nucci give you the prison population. There's 52,000 inmates in the Department of Corrections right now, and there's about 24,000 correction officers that supervise them. And it's a tough job. I know because I was one of those officers. But there are 36,000 parolees in the state of New York, and right now 650 parole officers are responsible for supervising those 36,000 parolees. I've heard many of the senators testify and ask Acting Commissioner Nucci's questions about the rise in crime. A lot of local municipalities have been asking what's going on with parolees in the community. Why are they committing so many crimes nowadays? Well, I can tell you, because I've been around through the transition, is that, you know, we also heard about the risk and needs tools. We heard about the compass tools. I heard Assemblyman O'Donnell talk about the parole board was not using this. What's that designed to do? It's designed to give an inmate a questionnaire, and based upon their response, it determines the risk and needs that person has on there. And I would agree that some parolees come out with more risks. They come out with more needs. Some are undomiciled. We heard about the shelter system in New York City and how it's overcrowded. We hear about these young kids who are coming out, you know, without the skill sets. And we heard so much from the commissioner when he testified about what they're doing inside the facilities to help these kids get along and come out better, these inmates. What we did not hear the commissioner, it's disturbing to me, is that during his direct testimony, he never testified about anything in community supervision. I would tell you there's definitely a disconnect between what happens in the facilities and what happens out here. Prior to our merger and prior to the old parole supervision, a parole officer would supervise up to 40 parolees when they first came out for the first year. That was called intensive supervision. It allowed the parole officer to meet with these people 2, 3, 4 times a month inside the office. It allowed them to meet with them 2, 3, 4 times a month in the community. You made sure they're doing well, because the parole officer has to wear 2 different hats. We wear the hat as law enforcement, but we also wear the hat as a counselor to help these guys out. Nowadays, the new Compass system allows, 4 different levels, where a parolee could be supervised on 25 to 1, one parole officer per 25 people, 40 to 1. Where it gets disturbing nowadays is that there's level 3s and 4s, which they consider being low risk, where one parole officer is supervising 80 people on a level 3 caseload, and on a level 4 caseload, one parole officer is supervising 160 people. And they're considered low risk. And how Compass determines, weighs it, a lot of deals with age. A lot of these low risk parolees per Compass, they're a guy who has a murder, he has double homicide, robbery first, just did 30 years inside the facility, and he's coming out as a low risk parolee. Now, you can't imagine the face on these parolees on their low risk, because the standard on the level 4 is that you see them once every 4 months. For the first 2 months, you see them, pretty much weekly. But then after your first 2 months, when you're telling them, hey, I need you to go to treatment. This is a job where you can find a job. You tell the parolee, I'll see you in 4 months. And they look at you like you're crazy. Because they're like, what do you mean 4 months? You don't want to see me for 4 months? No, that's how the science says we have to supervise you. And I can tell you right now, we're failing these people dramatically, because not seeing them in 4 months, not seeing them in 3 months, we're losing out. The reason why I supervise a sex offender caseload as a supervisor, the reason why the sex offenders recidivate at such a low rate is that we see them all the time. We are on top of them. We know if they miss one treatment program. We know as soon as they are positive for drugs. The new Compass system right now was a cost-effective tool to eliminate parole officers and its rise to crimes, unfortunately. And I apologize for that. I would also like to clarify a couple things that they talked about. You heard about the 2 different warrant sweeps, the absconders, and you heard about, I think Senator Oakes talked about police officers doing our jobs. And I think it's wonderful to have the information come our way, but you also hear about the absconder, the absconder thing in which they did. OSI is the Office of Special Investigation. It's ran by the Department of Corrections. It's the former Inspector General's office. They led 2 different warrant sweeps on absconders. Senator Zolio told you the department talks about 1 to 200, one parole officer per 200 absconders. OSI ran a warrant sweep in Rochester in December, the 22nd through, I think, 19th to the 22nd. They brought 100 different correction officers, CERT officers, and a few different parole officers. They focused on 36 parole absconder warrants. During that time, they caught 13 people. It cost the state to pay their overtime, their regular salary, and lodging approximately $250,000 to run that one operation. That was a net rate of $19,000 per one absconder. The one in Brooklyn cost the state, I believe it was around $450,000. They caught 50 absconders, I think 59, running at the state about $8,000 per absconder. I can tell you in Syracuse, during that same 3-day period, they did the warrant attempt in Rochester. I had my regular parole officers who are still seeing their parolees for the office and at home. We did our own warrant sweep without paying any overtime. I caught 9, costing the state no money extra. We have problems also with OSI running the operations due to many different reasons right now. Assemblyman O'Donnell heard from Corrections Institute, and they talked about reform for OSI and the problems that's plagued OSI across the state. We heard from Assistant Commissioner Nucci talk about reforms in which they're trying to put forward with OSI. We have a lot of problems with that. I can tell you right now, the Rochester sweep, and we're affecting public safety right now. We were always told, your relationship with your parolee is what's going to save you as a parole officer. You need to build that relationship. You build that trust. You build their care. You build the family's trust, and that's how you get by. What they did when they ran these warrant sweeps, instead of talking your way in, they introduced CERT K-9 units. They had CERT, officers there with assault rifles. They answered the door with a ballistic shield in their hand and someone pointing a gun behind her when grandma and grandpa and mom and dad and the loved ones answered the door. So what they did there is that they trampled over our relationship because we understand we violate that guy's parole, he's coming back in 90 days. We got to work with him. We got to make him succeed. We want him to succeed. We want him to be productive. And what they did, they trampled over that whole relationship. And we question the motive in which they're doing that because the day they announced the warrant sweep and that OSI was going to take over our warrants was a day after the Corrections Association made their, I think, 107-page testimony to Crime and Corrections. So we question the motive behind there. We heard a lot of different things about vehicles. Mr. Annucci, before I go back, let me revert back real quick. They said that these warrant sweeps are not going to stop, and that's problematic for us because it was $700,000 for 2 warrant sweeps. If they continued those warrant sweeps for the rest of the year, it would cost $4,350,000 for 1 year. New York City has a high number of absconders down there, and the reason why that high number of absconders is down there is that prior to the merger, we used to have 7 different warrant teams down there with a senior parole officer and 6 parole officers. Now it's down to only 2 teams trying to find all those absconders. So just talk real quick about the vehicles, and I'll be done, I promise.
Okay, because we do have a lot of people waiting.
Yes, the vehicles, Commissioner Annucci talked about 37 vehicles, and I heard the state police talk about their vehicle fleet. I can tell you our vehicle fleet right now for community supervision, it's 219. Out of those, only 186 are assigned to parole officers to supervise 36,000 parolees. And we have right now 57 vehicles that have over 125,000 miles on them. A lot of them have over 200,000 miles on them. We are asking for that to be changed and for more money to be put into the budget to add more vehicles for our fleet. It's a resource in which we need to do because if there's not a vehicle available by the state vehicle, we're forced to use our own personal vehicle in which we take our family members in, we have our kids traveling in, and it's a danger to my officer's safety.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rigby. Senator Nozzolio.